I absolutely, positively, 3000% love the 1981 film Blowout, written and directed by the great Brian De Palma. But the fact that most people don't even know about this film, the fact that there are almost no video essays about this film online, the fact that when discussing Brian De Palma's career, Blowout gets discarded as this buffer film between Dressed to Kill and Scarface is some crazy bullshit that I feel I need to correct. I'm not going to sit here and argue where Blowout ranks in De Palma's filmography, but this film's recognition for the masterpiece it is long past overdue, and here is why. When I started analyzing why I love Blowout, I came to the realization that my reasons as to why the film is so great breaks down into three tiers: the little things, the big things, and the massive things. But before I dive into listing off the reasons why I love this film and why you should too, let me first give you a quick rundown of the film's plot in case you haven't seen it, which if you haven't, stop, go watch the movie, then come back and watch this video. The movie is about Jack, played by John Travolta, a sound engineer that works on shitty B-horror movies. One night, while recording sound for his movie, he witnesses and records the sound of a car swerving into a river.
Jesus Christ.
Jack jumps into the water and manages to save the love interest of the film, Shelley, but later finds out at the hospital that the car was carrying the governor and soon-to-be president of the United States.
What's going on here?
Car accident. Guy got killed.
I know that, but what's the big deal?
Did you know the guy was McRyan?
That's Governor McRyan?
That stiff on the stretcher was probably our next president. Hell, he had my vote.
But Jack knows that it wasn't an accidental blowout like the cops say it is. He heard a gunshot. Jack's commitment to the truth and unwillingness to shut up and forget the incident leads him to unearthing an assassination cover-up that puts Jack and Shelley's life in danger. The cold opening of the movie is a delicious meta-commentary on multiple levels. One of those levels is about Brian De Palma's own career. The opening 3.5 minutes of the film, Brian De Palma has us watching a terrible, cheesy, sexist 80s B horror movie, all done in one truly unbroken take from the POV of the killer as he stalks the blind as a bat sorority girls with a comically large and equally shiny kitchen knife. Not only is it hilarious in how he makes fun of the rise of cheap horror movies at the time, but it is also playing off the audience's expectations. If you had been following De Palma's career up till the release of Blowout, you knew that he had his roots in the horror genre with the forever classic Carrie coming out in 1976. But since the release of Carrie, De Palma has been operating in the suspense thriller genre. So I want you to go back in time and imagine you're in 1981. You're a movie buff and have been following De Palma's career closely. You sit down in the theater and without any commercials, the movie begins. The opening images of De Palma's new movies got you thinking that you're going to be watching a horror movie, and you get understandably excited to see him return to his roots. But slowly panic starts to set in as the absurdly terrible movie unfolds before you, only to be reassured when De Palma pulls us out of the crappy horror movie into introducing our main character, Jack, laughing at the absurdity of his own work.
God, the scream is terrible.
This is easily, in my opinion, the funniest meta-commentary by a director on his own filmography. Yes, that opinion does include Tarantino's commentary on his own foot fetish. One last funny thing about the opening of this film, De Palma hired Garrett Brown to operate the Steadicam for this shot, the man who invented the Steadicam in 1975, and had just come off working with Kubrick on The Shining.
I was obviously aware of the shot in Halloween. You know, it was groundbreaking. It was fun. From my point of view, fresh off Kubrick, it was not that well executed. It did a lot of this, which humans don't do. You know, have you noticed that? And when I got on this set, I was extremely disappointed to find out that I wasn't doing a good one. I was doing a parody of Halloween. I was doing a crappy horror film. You know, it's not easy to be bad, particularly after Kubrick. So every part of it went against the grain for me, every aspect of it.
De Palma hired the greatest Steadicam operator in the world to do the world's worst Steadicam shot. It's hilarious that in a few weeks, Garrett Brown went from doing this to this. The way that Brian De Palma delivers exposition in the beginning of this film is masterful. De Palma uses a split screen throughout the film and has used it several times before in movies prior to Blowout, but in the opening credits sequence, De Palma delivers us important exposition about the soon-to-be murdered governor and sets up the Liberty Day parade all via newsreel, but manages to keep our attention through what could be boring exposition in two ways. A, splitting up the screen gives us two things to look at, which is just inherently more interesting than one image to look at. And B, having one of those two images be visually kinetic, hypnotizing close-ups of Jack's analog sound equipment. And I gotta say, that's one of my favorite things about the entire film, is the beautifully lit and shot dance of machinery that is those analog switches and levers on Jack's 80s era sound equipment. Jack, of course, being played by the great John Travolta, who gives an outstanding dramatic performance.
They're gonna close the book, and any loose ends that happen to be hanging out like you or me are gonna be cut right off. So you got your choice. You can be crazy or dead. Either will do.
Travolta perfectly balances the important everyman aspect of Jack that keeps him relatable, while simultaneously keeping the special, enigmatic, one-of-a-kind, charming energy that only Travolta possesses. De Palma's visual sense is outstanding in the film as per usual. The genre-fluid nature of the film allows for a wide range of visual expression on the part of De Palma and his magnificent DP, Vilmos Zsigmond. There's so many great examples of this, but one of my favorites is the scene where Jack finds out that all the tapes that he has have been wiped. The camera stays in the middle of the room as it pans around doing 360 after 360, and Jack begins to panic. As Jack begins to panic, realizing that all of his tapes, including the one of the recorded murder, have been erased, the audience, while trying to figure out what's going on, is also starting to share the same growing anxiety Jack feels. And this is done without any dialogue. It's all thanks to the original but effective technique of having the ever-speeding camera locked off in the middle of the room, coupled with the perfectly growing white noise. What it does is not just create anxiety for anxiety's sake, but through De Palma's mastery of the craft, he has the audience's emotional state mirror that of Jack's. And whenever a movie can match the emotional state of the audience with the emotional state of the character on an effective primal level, it is an example of a cold-blooded badass filmmaker that has a complete command over his or her craft. Then you have parts of the movie that have little mini horror scenes going on, which are almost always found when John Lithgow's character is in the scene, who plays the murdering psychopath, Burke. Before I get into that, I just want to say that John Lithgow is one of my favorite character actors out there. I can't get enough of this guy. He makes for such a haunting, creepy villain in this movie without being over the top or needlessly insane, which in turn makes the scenes that he is heavily featured or stars in stand strong on their own without the help of a supporting cast. You can't look away when he's on the screen is my point.
I didn't want to do it. She made me do it. No, you ask her. She'll tell you.
Okay, where is she?
I don't know. Somewhere. In that big hole. You know, near the Reading Market, where they're building something. But don't listen to her. She made me do it.
Okay, just tell me where you are. Where?
Anyway, back to the mini horror movie scene. In this scene, Burke kills this random woman who looks like the character of Sally in order to make Sally's planned future killing not seem suspicious. In the beginning of the scene, De Palma gives us terrific suspenseful imagery as we follow the woman from behind. De Palma and Vilmos use terrifying red light, amazing shadow work, along with a thrilling score, all combined for a unique horror movie feel that is only lightly felt throughout the rest of the film. Another example of how the movie uses the camera as an emotional device is how there's shots in almost every other scene of where the camera seems to be spying on the characters through windows, from a helicopter, or this great shot which De Palma uses 2 or 3 times throughout the film, where he places the camera from a bird's eye view, making use of the 4-wall sets that don't have a ceiling. It's almost more like a spy satellite point of view than bird's eye view. And what it does is as De Palma says,
The growing paranoia.
Yeah.
This leads me to the little things that I love about this movie. It's De Palma's unique choices that makes this movie different from any other thriller. Like having the perfectly placed blink and you'll miss it mystery figure emerge from the shadow of the bridge when the blowout first happens, brilliantly plants the seed in the audience's head that there is more to the story than meets the eye. The way that De Palma doesn't give it any attention, doesn't go to a close-up of the guy leaving the bridge, makes the audience members who do see it think that they are uncovering a mystery themselves, giving agency to the audience like any good mystery does. But also later on, when Jack first questions the idea that there's a conspiracy, we know that there is some validity to it. We believe it because we know information that he doesn't. Another scene in this movie that I really love is when Jack first goes back and listens to the recording of the blowout. De Palma takes his time with this scene, putting us not just in the shoes of Jack, but in his actual mind. We get to see Jack's actual thought process represented in a beautifully cinematic way, And by De Palma taking his time in not just this scene, but in every scene where Jack is trying to figure out the murder, gets us invested in the mystery and Jack. But also I can't help but think that these scenes are a sort of love letter to the roles in filmmaking that don't get a lot of press, like sound engineers, Foley artists, animation artists, as opposed to other movies that feature the filmmaking process where writers, directors, and actors are usually the stars of. Or how about this awesome mini crime movie that happens via flashback halfway through the film? Unknown to the original 1981 audience, this flashback gives us a taste of the then upcoming crime-centric genre movies that will go on to dominate the legacy of De Palma's filmography, i.e. Scarface, The Untouchables. This flashback gives the audience the necessary backstory on the character of Jack that we didn't even know we wanted but needed, by giving us the information that Jack decided to leave a lifelong career in public service for the low-stakes life of the private sector after the battery on the wire he hooked up for an undercover agent burned a hole in his gut and got him killed. The flashback does all this while simultaneously foreshadowing and subtly sets up the Greek tragedy that is the ending of this film, adding yet another layer to Jack's motivation throughout the entire film. Finally, the original and brilliant score of this film is underrated and underappreciated to a degree that genuinely makes me want to personally pay for and launch an international awareness campaign the likes of which the world has never seen. Said brilliant score by Italian composer Pino D'Agino gives the star relationship between Sally and Jack emotional depth that goes beyond them just being star-crossed lovers. For me, the score subconsciously hinted that the future of these said lovers is doomed to be tragic. Pino evokes this idea throughout the entire composition, but it is especially prevalent in the melancholy piano hook that will certainly make you well up at the end of the film. Also, this scene is hilarious.
This is the pivotal moment in the film. You gotta realize that. Hey, Jack, where the fuck are you going?
Sam, I'll be right back. Okay?
I need you now. Now get in here. What do you think?
Keep looking.
Listen, there are so many reasons why this movie is so damn great, and I would have no problem with sitting here and explaining to you all of them. But what makes this movie a masterpiece in my opinion, what makes this one of my favorite movies of all time, is the grander and bold philosophical commentary De Palma makes on American culture and politics. But to find out what De Palma says that's just so damn bold, you'll have to watch part 2 of this video. Or you could just, watch the movie.